Hello, and welcome back to yet another anime review. Casual, albeit, but still an anime review nonetheless. Today's anime review is going to be about a anime that I recently finished, because that seems to be really the only sort of anime that I want to review, because I want to watch the entire episode, or at least enough of a show to be able to say that I've got a good enough idea as to whether or not the show is good or not good, or whether I liked it or didn't like it. So, Izetta the Last Witch is a historical action military-esque show. At least that's what the my anime list description says that it is. There's a little bit of magic in there, if you could not have told by the title, The Last Witch. It does have some magic in it. It takes place, so it's sort of like World War II, but they've changed enough of it that it's like not World War II, but it is World War II. Like, the main enemy in the show, the main nation that they're fighting against, or that the Aelstadt, country of Aelstadt. There's a country of Aelstadt. It gets confusing because there's one of the main characters, Fine, or her full name is Ortfine Frederica von Aelstadt, who is the, without spoiling too much of it, she's like the Princess of Aelstadt. And Aelstadt is also the country name that they are in as well, so it's a little confusing, as they're in the country of Aelstadt, and Ortfine Frederica von Aelstadt is the sort of princess of that country. And her best friend is Izetta, who, if you could not tell, is the last witch. If you didn't know that already, Izetta is a witch, of which she is the last of. If that makes sense. So because it takes place in Europe, it has in Germania, if that's not obvious enough to be Germany is the sort of main protagonist, or the main antagonist rather, of this whole anime. The name, it has a German name, which I will try to pronounce, but my German is not the best. I do apologize to anyone who can speak German fluently. So the synonyms for the show are, and you'll see this throughout all like the mid-cards and stuff throughout the show, throughout the entire series. Izetta dilatste hexe. I know I had to have gotten that at least a little bit correct. It should letste hexe. I don't know. I know that means last. Obviously, again, because of the name of the show, The Last Witch. I know Die Letzte Hexe stands for The Last Witch. So there's a little bit of German sprinkled throughout the show, but it's a good show. On to the show, without wasting any more time about the names and the producers, or the sort of genres that the show is in. A little bit of the description from my anime list. After Germania invaded a neighboring country in 1939, if that is not also obvious enough that it takes place during World War II, Europe spiraled into a devastating war, the second one, perhaps, in the history of Europe, or even the world, for that matter. During the war, Germania set its sights on the weak alpine country of Aelstadt, boasting a far superior military and having achieved profuse success earlier in the war. It was expected that Germania would conquer Aelstadt with ease. that is until, wait for it, Izetta, the last of the witches, slightly turns that around a little bit for at least the first half of the show. And the whole show sort of focuses on Izetta and the princess, Aelstadt, or Fine, and sort of how they plan to use Izetta as sort of a weapon to win the war against Germania. And the show itself, I loved the show. Absolutely loved the show. But I feel as though they, sometime around episode 6, they realized that they weren't going to have a second season, and they decided to then just rush the entire rest of the story and rush to a conclusion and sort of just finish it off because they knew they weren't getting a second season. Now, that is slightly disappointing to me because I, again, loved the show, and I really would have loved to see more character development, not just from, the main cast, Izetta and Ortfine, but from also the supporting characters in the show, and even some more of the characters that were introduced mid-series, and then, again, if you've seen the show, I think you might know what I'm referring to. There's characters that get introduced who I would love to know more about, but it just seems like, again, they were so rushed into wrapping everything up because they knew they weren't getting to do a second season, which I think would have been absolutely amazing if they had gotten the opportunity to do it, because then with the second season, they could have gone into more character development, they could have slowed the pace of the entire show down a little bit more and really gone in depth as to what Izetta's plans were to defeat Germania, how they obtained certain things in the show to defeat Germania. Again, if you've seen the show, I think it has to do with that stone. I think you know what I'm referring to with this. For both parties, Germania and Aelstadt, I think could have, gone with a little bit more. They explained how, I think they kind of briefly touched on how Germania got their stone, their half of the stone, but they never really kind of went in depth as to how the people from Aelstadt got their half of the stone. So I would have really loved to see at least part of an episode devoted to that, seeing how they got that. And because at the end of one episode, this guy just whips out part of the stone. It's oh, this might be able to help. So there's that. They explain what the stone does, but they just never explain how they get the stone, if that makes sense at all, which I hope it does. And again, it's unfortunate that the show didn't get a second season because, again, the show suffers a little bit because, again, it's just so rushed, and I hate that. I hate when shows are rushed through because they have deadlines to meet, or because they're not getting a second season or a third season or whatever. They're not getting another season to fully develop the plot to the show, and they're not getting all the time they really want or deserve to tie up any loose ends or plot holes. They just have to sort of, that this is how this is resolved. We fixed it. Boop, push the button. Everything's fixed. Boom, and done. Which is not really what they did in this show, but I do feel like most of the show was, especially towards like the later half of the series, it definitely felt rushed. It definitely did feel as though, like, the animation was great, the storyline was great, the plot was awesome. It's just whoever at the animation studio or whoever decides what shows get a second season decided that the show was not getting a second season or whatever, and they just wrapped everything up as quickly as they could. I mean, they did the best. I feel as though they did the best that they could wrapping everything up in the end, but I just would have loved to see a little bit more of the show and how everything was wrapped up if had they had more time to do so, because I don't know, I guess they felt like it kind of feels like they expected to get a second season running up till probably episode 7, and then 8 through 12 they realized they're not getting a second season, so they just sort of quickly like pack as much information into as much information that they feel is important into each episode before they have no more time left. So I don't know if in the future Izetta the Last Witch gets a reboot like Fruits Basket, if Izetta the Last Witch gets a reboot similar to the one that Fruits Basket recently got, that would be amazing. I don't know if that's ever going to happen, or if it does happen, that would be amazing. But if it ever does happen, I wish they would take more time, slow everything down, spread everything out more, kind of give us more information, and just sort of exactly what they did in Fruits Basket. Taking 3 seasons to give us everything that we wanted from Fruits Basket. And I feel like Izetta the Last Witch deserves that sort of reboot, or because it's a fantastic anime, it's a fantastic story. It doesn't have that runway to take. It just doesn't have a big enough runway to take off. You know what I mean? Like, there's everything is there, it just doesn't have enough room to expand. And I feel like a lot of people who have seen the show agree with that. And you can definitely see that it's rushed within the final 2 to 3 episodes. It's rushed. This video was not intended to be 15 minutes long, or however long it's going to be. I just really feel like ranting. So, closing thoughts. I thought that Izetta the Last Witch was, going by my anime list's rating standards, I'm gonna have to give Izetta the Last Witch a 7 out of 10, because I loved the show. I absolutely adored the show. I thought it was amazing. Fantastic anime, but it docks a few points because of the douchebag who didn't give the show a second season. Whoever is in charge of that stuff should have realized this show was 2 seasons worthy, at least worthy of 2 seasons. Because the whole story, you can't just cram everything that this show has going for it as far as the story and the plot into just 12, 25-minute episodes. You need at least 24 episodes to sort of tell the story of the show has, because it's an amazing anime. It's just, to repeat what I said earlier, it's just unfortunate how it just got rushed for whatever reason toward the end there. Like, there's so many things that got left out, and so many things I feel that got left out because of time restraints and because of the fact that there's only 12 episodes. You know, like, I feel this show should have gotten a lot more airtime, runtime. You know, it should have gotten renewed for another, because it's such a fantastic show. I absolutely loved it. And I mean, the animation style is right up my alley. The plot, I love history. I love anything sort of action packed, which this show is. It's action, it's historical, there's a little bit of magic tossed in. That I love that stuff. I would have absolutely loved to see 12 more episodes of this show. So before this video goes on for too much longer, I'm going to cut it here. So thank you guys so much for listening to me rant for all this time, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.